Are you familiar with FBI Special Agents Kyle Seraphin?
I'm familiar with the name.
Is that yes?
I'm familiar with the name. Familiar with the name. Familiar with the name.
Let's bring in Kyle Seraphin. He's the FBI whistleblower who helped expose government censorship of our First Amendment rights.
Now, we only have this memo because a recently suspended FBI agent called Kyle Seraphin brought it to the public, and we're grateful that he did. Kyle, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
He's the host of something that strangely is called the Kyle Seraphin Show.
Kyle Seraphin, I can't thank you enough for speaking out. I knew you guys were out there, and I knew it was just a matter of time, but you got a lot of guts putting your face and your name to this. You're doing a service on behalf of the American people, and from the bottom of my cracked and broken heart sometimes, thank you very much.
Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Hello, my friends. Welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show. Today's Thursday. It's October the 24th. And I want to welcome you to our program talking about fascism. Apparently, that's the October surprise. The October surprise is that Donald Trump is a terrible fascist. Man, we've never heard anything like that before. We've never heard about Orange Man bad, Hitler. This is all new. I don't know how it's going to affect the election. I don't know if people are going to be able to survive it. It turns out they did this exact same thing with the exact same players in 2020. You remember how he called all those members of the military at Normandy suckers and losers? Remember how that actually didn't happen? It was debunked pretty roundly and continues to be debunked. And they keep saying it. The same people are at the root of this story. Here's the problem. Absolutely desperate on the end of the Democrats to throw this Hail Mary nonsense about Hitler. And then you don't see them necessarily panicking. They're just digging into their stupid same old bag of tricks. We also heard that some woman 31 years ago had her butt grabbed by Donald Trump. It's kind of why I'm like this. They've got this kind of nonsense going on over in the Democrat Party. I guess. Honey, get your boyfriend in here. They got him. They finally got the Trump. They got him. Yeah. Do we believe any of this stuff? No. Do some people want to just hang their hats on it? Yeah. The guy that sits in the corner while his wife takes another lover. Probably that guy does. It's such a strange, it's such an unserious time. We're not a serious country. We have unserious people running for office. It used to be that you'd have like a lesser of two evils, but both of them seem like at least Hillary Clinton's smart. Can we just agree? Hillary Clinton is not dumb. I can't even say that about Kamala Harris. It's so unbelievable. All right, before we get too deep into the weeds, let me say a couple things. Number one, if you guys are following us over on Locals, and I highly encourage you to do so, go to Locals. It's going to be KyleSeraphin.com, or it's thekyleserafinshow.locals.com. Much easier. Just my name. KyleSeraphin.com is where you can sign up. Today, I'm going to be dropping a 14-minute video that I pulled off the Khan Academy, because I want you guys to be able to answer this long form. If you want history, if you want even more than what I'm going to show you, I'm going to give you a couple of minutes of a taste of this. I edited and chopped it down, and I actually sped it up because this one's a little bit slow for my taste. But we've got a lesson on what is fascism, as defined by people who are PhDs in that field. Not the field of fascism, but political science. I want you to have an idea of what they keep calling him. And it tells you how foolish you have to be to listen to it and be like, oh yeah, of course. It's the same reason why they keep calling this country a democracy, while it is quite clearly not a democracy. And in fact, the founding fathers of this country did everything they could to keep us from that tyranny, the tyranny of the majority. The idea that you would have majoritarianism, which is in fact a tyrannical type of thing, in the same way that authoritarianism, one authority, is also tyrannical. There's a lot of ways that you can infringe on the minority. And that's what's been the hallmark of the American situation. The general belief that majority rules, but minority is protected. You have to have both sides of that coin if you want America to work. And they being the people who have run this country for over 100 years, have slowly but surely eroded those foundational things. And it's the reason why, as you swear allegiance to the Constitution today, it's not the Constitution that existed, let's say, before World War I. It's just not. I could probably leave almost everything after the 14th Amendment behind. I'm even okay with poll taxes at this point. I really am. If you can't afford the poll tax, why should you vote? Is it inconvenient? Yes, it is. But voting is it's an exercising of authority. And if you don't have the ability to spare whatever that is, I know they put them in place to get rid of black people from voting. I know they did this under Jim Crow. I understand all of that. And that instinct is terrible at that time. But today it wouldn't do that same thing. Today it would do something different. I'm seriously telling you that my firm position is that less people voting is better. Generally, okay? That doesn't mean that you should not vote in November. But I think the franchise, the ability to vote, should be limited to people that have a say in it. That's the reason why we have illegal aliens going and registering. We're seeing some reporting coming out of the Heritage Project, the Oversight Project, along with folks at Real Muckraker. So if you follow Anthony Rubin, that's going on over there. They're showing that people are getting registered to vote in, Tim Walz's state, in Minnesota. And they're doing it at work. And they're doing it and they're illegal. This should be a real problem when the state goes out and does this sort of thing. But it doesn't slow them down. Just because it should doesn't mean that it is. All right, before we dive into that, I want to do a plug right up front. My friends over at Shield Arms, Second Amendment company, an arms manufacturer. Their slogan is, "We make what people ban," or what politicians ban. I guess I could show you the pistol. Here, let me show you a pistol. Screw it, we're off YouTube too. So here you go. This is a Glock 43X with a red dot on it. It's using a Shield Arms magwell. It's got a Shield Arms magazine release over here, which is really nice, and it's steel. It's much nicer than the factory one. And I've got a Shield Arms S15 with a +2. This is a 17-round pistol in a tiny little package. It's also got a suppressor on it because why not? If you want to get yourself armed in a way that has highly capable micro pistols, and that's what people like to carry these days, smaller and smaller packages, check that out. Check out upgrading your magazine from a 10 factory to a 15. It's a game changer to be able to carry 50% more. That makes it an effective combat pistol, even though it's very small. And I've shot this thing out to 80 yards. You can shoot your little tiny thing that you can conceal under a t-shirt and in board shorts that far. And I recommend you guys go check them out. Use promo code Kyle. It's in the show descriptions always. Promo code Kyle will save you 5% site-wide, including on firearms. You won't find that anywhere else. Pretty neat deal. Let's push on. Let's keep pushing here. There's something I wanted to revisit from yesterday because I don't think we gave it enough topic time. This senior Pentagon official that's suspected of leaking Israeli information. One of the things that's being reported over by Gateway Pundit, a couple of other people touched on it. I saw it yesterday, but I guess I didn't give it as much thought until after I was revisiting the topic after our program. There was a program that was called the Iranian Expert Initiative, IEI. And that's the claim that this woman, Ariane, Tabatabai, I don't really care. Somebody tried to correct me on Twitter and gave me a pronunciation key. I just don't care about people's names that are highly ethnic and from terrorist countries. It's irrelevant to me. Her story is that she was tied to this little initiative, the Iranian Expert Initiative. And it reminded me that what they do, foreign intelligence services, what they like to do is recruit people that may eventually have access. If you're really smart, if you start looking down line, and I'm guessing they took this page out of the Chinese initiative. I'm going to cover that in just a second. But this is the thing that I wanted you to know. When you can go out there and capture people that may eventually get into a government role, and then you get a friendly administration, and those people are the most likely to get picked up. We talked about it the other day, something to the effect of the entire State Department is full of people that are basically dual loyal. They're loyal to the countries that they are born in, that their ethnic heritage comes from, and then also the United States. So they have this problem. Can they do the same thing that Kyle Seraphin? Can I do America only and be a State Department employee? The odds are no, you can't. And they don't let you. I would love to see it though. Wouldn't it be neat to see just a bunch of red-blooded Chads hanging out in there? Someone's like, hey, Should we take care of No, we shouldn't. Should we send money to these people? No, we should not. Why not? Because who gives a rat's? Why should we be supporting these countries? Consider this. America just had a couple of natural disasters hit us, right? And apparently FEMA's out of money. We had a natural disaster hit in Florida and then a double whammy between Hurricane Helene and Hurricane Milton. How many foreign nations have sent their envoys to help? How many of them have deployed their humanitarian help? How many of them have sent money or ships full of food or generators or whatever products it is that they put out there? Any? I would love to see evidence of it. Make sure you tag me if you find some. I don't understand how you can have people that are loyal to some other nation and the United States when they take an oath to the U.S. Constitution. It seems very problematic. And like I said, the evidence is pretty clear. This is a one-sided, one sort of benevolent dictatorship, except we're the ones getting taken advantage of. Americans see this. This is why the message of Make America Great Again, because there was a time when America knew that you take care of your own house first. I heard a priest say this outside of Washington, D.C. I'm sure it was really controversial at the time. But he said, you can't take care of anybody unless you take care of yourself. Now that sounds selfish if you're worried about that kind of thing. And it seems, anti-Christian to some folks. But of course you can't take care of anyone else if you don't take care of yourself. Think of The Giving Tree. You remember the book, the Shel Silverstein book, The Giving Tree? The tree gives everything until there is nothing. But that's not how trees function. Trees are meant to shed leaves and grow and get taller and maybe shed some branches every once in a while. If you want the tree to continue to be a tree and not a stump that is nothing, you can't give all the things. You cannot empty yourself out. There must be something there that continues to feed yourself. None of us are necessarily going to ever be able to do the example of Jesus Christ where you literally die. Although many men have died for this nation, that's a thing. You can't pour the entire nation out, however. And that's why when we talked to, what's his name? Mr. Slate, Jeremy Ryan Slate. He mentioned that borders and currency are like the two biggest pieces that have to be intact. You must have borders and you must have a solvent currency. And we've seen it kind of both eroded. Here's a little parallel I wanted to throw to you. That Iranian expert initiative is very similar to this, and it didn't occur to me yesterday, so I'm going to bring it up. The Confucius Institute. It seems very clear to me that the Iranians have taken a page out of a big winner for the Chinese. The Confucius Institute is a quote-unquote cultural promotion organization. Wikipedia is very gentle about this thing, by the way. It tells you where it's based in Beijing. It's a worldwide education and advocacy thing. It was founded 20 years ago in 2004, and it came to the United States, and the first thing they do is promote Chinese culture, as long as you play by the Chinese rules. They also push things on the academic institutions because they throw a lot of money around, and they're able to wield soft power, is what the Chinese call it. Soft power is a financial power. It's not coming in and forcing and requiring. They're just saying, hey, if you want any of this cash that we're throwing out, you must play by my rules. And by the way, it gives them a foothold in the door to put intelligence, assets, and those that are co-opted by the Chinese intelligence service. This is a well-known problem. They're able to corrupt the faculties and make them pro-Chinese so that when they get into positions like think tanks, when they get in positions like lobbying, or when they get into positions like someone in the administration, high-level State Department, CIA, advisor to the presidents, etc., they are already pro-Chinese missions. It's a little clip. I read all of their Wikipedia page because I found it really interesting. This is the one that stood out most to me as far as being accurate. On October 4th of 2021, the Human Rights Foundation, which I don't agree with almost anything they do, published a report saying the Confucius Institute, quote, cultivated a climate of intimidation and surveillance within American classrooms, end quote. And then another, quote, both information censorship and self-censorship are especially prevalent as educators, researchers, administrators, and students alike are steered away from learning or critically thinking about the topics that are deemed sensitive to the Chinese government, such as democracy, the 3 Ts, Hong Kong, the Uyghur genocide, and CCP's other prevailing human rights infringements, end quote. This is what this is about for me. You move people in, you project soft power. We've seen all of our enemies come and do this under the Biden and Harris regime. They've been soft on the wrong people. They've cozied up to the billionaires. For some reason, people who are worth a fortune are not interested in having a Republican in when they keep saying they're going to make the billionaires pay their fair share. Why do so many billionaires back policies that talk about them paying their fair share unless it's all lip service? We saw Chris Cuomo actually say that when he was on the floor of the DNC. It's a very poignant reminder that all the troops are listening to the words and they're going out there and carrying out the message. And then there's the people that are sitting in the box seats, the luxury boxes, the people that are literally above the fray. And they're the ones pulling that string. Fairly fascinating, I think. I think it tells us a lot about how the game is really played. And most people now, on the political right at least, are waking up to that fact. What's funny is the people on the political left continue, like for all of my lifetime, were the ones raving about how the system is rigged. They just think it's rigged in their favor right now. And they forget that the crocodile always kills the most moderate on the same team first. This is how it goes. If you are going to have a totalitarian overthrow from the hard left, same thing for the hard right, by the way, you go get the squishy people in your party first, the ones that are amenable to ideas on the other side, because they're the biggest threat. To you, they're an internal threat, and they soften your position. What you do is you solidify your position. So all of these sort of semi-independent left-center types that are cozying up to those on the hard left, they are the ones that are going to get destroyed first. If there was going to be a gulag system or camps, they're the ones who die in it first. And I don't understand how they don't know it because there's so much history behind this. It's the same thing on the right, by the way. You get the squishy people that aren't 100% committed to the regime. You need zealots. And then you go after people like me. Because I'm a hard target. You go after soft targets first. You blood your troops on the easy stuff, and you normalize the violence in that way. We're going to be talking about fascism because it's being bandied around quite a bit right now. And it started yesterday when we covered this thing. I didn't actually have the historical context on Jeffrey Goldberg. Sometimes I look a little bit more into the person that's reporting. Sometimes I don't. Again, this is the article before they changed it. Trump is literally Hitler. Then they changed the first paragraphs and they went into the story of a Hispanic soldier who was murdered. And then allegedly, with no validation, there's a throwaway that Trump referred to her as an effing Mexican, despite the fact that he reached out to her family. That woman's family who was murdered, her whole family has been all over social media saying, yeah, we're going to be supporting Donald Trump. He was great to our family. He offered to do anything he could, said he would pay for the funeral, even though the military was already going to do it. So screw you with this nonsense. But I want you to understand that this claim, it's not new. Goldberg is a shill. Goldberg is someone that has been playing this game at least since 2020, and he's the same person who wrote the story about the suckers and losers. I didn't know that. Maybe you didn't either. I'm going to let you tell you in his own words, and I've never heard someone who is more disingenuous. These guys are such disheveled losers. Talking about suckers and losers. Look at this clown show. All right, this is a clip from 2020, back to back with a clip from October of 24, which just happened. This is their October surprise. It's so weak and frail. And then we're going to get into the town hall that Kamala Harris did, where if there were undecided voters in there, I can't imagine that she walked away with any of them deciding in her favor.
At issue is a report by The Atlantic's Jeffrey Goldberg based on accounts from anonymous sources. Goldberg writes of the morning Trump was scheduled to visit an American cemetery near Paris, where American Marines are buried. This is a piece of the article. In a conversation with senior staff members on the morning of the scheduled visit, Trump said, quote, "Why should I go to that cemetery? It's filled with losers." In a separate conversation on the same trip, Trump referred to more than 1,800 Marines who lost their lives at Belleau Wood as, quote, suckers for getting killed. Earlier today, Goldberg responded to the pushback from the president and several of the president's aides.
I stand by my reporting. I have multiple sources telling me this is what happened.
Here's what Kelly told The Atlantic magazine about a White House conversation after Trump told Kelly he wished he'd be more like German generals. Kelly said, quote, "Do you mean the Kaiser's generals? Surely you can't mean Hitler's generals." And Trump said, yeah, Hitler's generals. What do you think that this is important for voters to know about? Is that one of the why did you do the story now? Is it you finally got the confirmation of these stories recently?
Yeah, I got confirmations and I got on the record interviews that I needed to make sure that the story was solid, including an interview with General Kelly. Yeah.
What I want to do is I want to ask you a question and make sure I give you the possible answer of the question. I keep seeing this over and over again. By the way, this happens on the left and the right. They're all terrible at doing these interviews. Let me ask you a question and then show you how smart I am by giving you a possible answer that I think is probably the answer that you're going to give in just a second here. Did I get the answer correct? They're so desperate for validation and they're so lazy about it that they can't just patiently listen and say, I brought this person on to answer something. But yeah, that's what he did, apparently. He waited for an interview with General Kelly. So anonymous sources, plus the guy who's gone out there and been virulently and vigorously anti-Trump. And that's your validation, apparently. Okay. Nobody buys it. In fact, Anderson Cooper had to bring it up in the town hall. We'll play that in a second here, but let's just start with this. There's this idea, two little sort of laws that are out there in public discussion. One's a corollary, one's the original. But Godwin's law is basically the adage that suggests if there's an online discussion and it grows long enough, the likelihood of someone making a comparison to Adolf Hitler or Nazis approaches certainty. This was formulated in the 1990s when they were talking about these like Usenet groups, which were just sort of chat rooms and online platforms, kind of like an old Reddit. And the recognized corollary, commonly associated with Godwin's law. So if you guys are not familiar with Godwin's law, but Steve French cites it to me all the time, that once the comparison to Hitler or Nazis is made, that discussion is effectively over. The person who made the comparison is considered to have lost the argument. That rings true because by the time you have to go to this person is literally Hitler, hold on, let me just show it to you on the screen, literally Hitler, you lost. And I found this meme because I thought it was funny. Hitler versus Donald Trump. Hitler caused the death of 80 million people, tried to exterminate an entire race. Donald Trump lowered some taxes, hurt your feelings. We could add mean tweets and speaks inartfully. The bottom of it says, knock it off, you look stupid. Is it not absurd? Like, do these people not look at themselves and go, yeah, I'm freaking ridiculous. I am an absolutely ridiculous person. I'm going to operate in this ridiculous nature. And before we finish on this little topic of Goldberg, I wanted to throw something else out there that was not relevant I didn't recognize it until now. Laurene Powell Jobs, that's the late Steve Jobs' surviving widow. She's one of Kamala Harris's biggest bankrollers and closest friends. She's worth like upwards of $15 billion. That's a lot of money. Do you know what else is interesting about Miss Jobs? She owns The Atlantic. She owns the organization that put this article out. The same one that put out the Suckers and Losers garbage by Jeffrey Goldberg, that called Trump literally Hitler and decided to smear a family of a murdered soldier. She owns The Atlantic. Isn't that interesting? I want you to keep it in mind that existing institutions and elites are part of the game. They have to be involved if you're going to do something that's referred to as fascism. Actual fascism. Not calling someone who you don't like fascism, which is a common game. How interesting. Let's go ahead and start with a couple of things that Kamala talked about that are absolutely ridiculous. And then we'll get into the fascism full bore. I just want to give you a little taste of what the town hall looked like. And then we'll pivot over to the full discussion of fascism to kind of close out the show, because I think it's very worth having and it's worth all the time that I can give it. So start off with, apparently she thinks the federal government should be involved in doing affordable housing. That's when I hear affordable housing, maybe you do too, I think slum. Affordable housing is a slang term for coming in, creating a project, also known as housing projects, and then abandoning them and having them run very poorly, so eventually they're run down garbage. It also means the least efficient way of spending our money to house people. This is not like nonprofits. This is not charitable giving. This is not facilities that are going to have local oversight. These are garbage. And you want the federal housing to get involved in affordable housing. She also wants the federal government involved in somehow dealing with your rent. I just would like someone to give me an example of anything the federal government touches in the financial world that turns out better for us. I'm confident that my Social Security is going to be worth less than if I invested it myself. I know that. I know that for a fact. I would give away all my Social Security that I've paid up to this point at 42 years of age. I would take none of it if I never had to pay it again. That'd be amazing. You can give it to anybody else. All of these things are Ponzi schemes. But yeah, let's get her talking about her affordable housing plans and helping you with your rent. This is like trying to buy votes in ways that make no sense to me at all.
But to your point, Eric, there are a number of issues that we need to address in terms of bringing down the cost of living. It includes what we need is a new approach that I bring to the issue of affordable housing, including, for example, rent. And again, I bring to it my experience, knowing what has been happening in terms of how corporations have been buying up blocks of property to diminish competition, and then rents get jacked up, and addressing that, both in terms of making sure that there is a consequence and accountability for that, but also investing in people's dreams of home ownership, knowing that for too long, frankly, both administrations in both parties, Democrats and Republicans, haven't done enough to deal with the issue of housing. And we need a new approach that includes working with the private sector. I say that as a devout public servant, working with the private sector to cut through the red tape, working with home builders, working with developers to create tax incentives so that we can create more housing supply and bring down the price.
Everything about that makes my head explode. Why not you just say, you know what, I'm probably not very good at this because maybe we should turn it to the guy that I'm running against who in fact is a developer of real estate. You can't simultaneously demonize large corporations that come in and buy stuff up and then at the same time say, we're going to partner with them. Who heard that and was like, oh yeah, that totally makes sense. Like that's a fantastic plan. That's going to lower rents. We want to incentivize the American dream of home ownerships by giving away money to make the cost of home ownership go up. Every single thing that the government gets themselves involved in has an increase in price because they inflate it and they use the money the least efficient way possible. They continue to take your money, run it through some bureaucratic nightmare of losers. You want to talk about suckers and losers? They're people that work for the federal government that they suck on the American teat. They have zero reason to have a job. It's a federal jobs program. They have jobs because people need jobs, as we've talked about many times over. Not only is she ridiculous on this, she also apparently now is in support of a border wall. As long as she can kind of disparage the way that Donald Trump did it under his thing, she's back to putting a border wall up. There's no principle this woman will not flip-flop on. And now, the crazy thing is this, when you hear her talk, they sound like sentences. If you were in another room, this is the only way you could think that Kamala Harris made sense. I think if you were in another room and you weren't listening, kind of like some husbands tend to do when they're watching football. I may have seen this. I'm not a football watcher, but I get it. I've done this in other, maybe I'm working on something. And the wife is saying something to you and you're like, you're hearing their words. You're looking for the catchphrases, kids. Okay, pick them up later. Okay. Like that kind of thing. If you just did that with Kamala Harris, she'd be like, oh, she's solution, bipartisan. She's talking about something that, pathway to citizenship. Maybe if you heard that stuff, you go, okay, fine. She's got an idea. She has no plan. She continues to have no plan. It's over and over and over again. It's the same thing. One of you just said it. Renzo just said it in our chat. If you read the transcript, your head would explode. That's probably true. You'd think that she was drunk. Here we go.
We know what can work.
Well, let's talk about this compromise bill that you want to pass if you're elected. You said that's going to be a priority. It includes $650 million in funding for the border wall. That's something Republicans wanted. That was part of the compromise. Under Donald Trump, you criticized the wall more than 50 times. You called it stupid, useless, and a medieval vanity project. Is a border wall stupid?
Well, let's talk about Donald Trump and that border wall. So remember, Donald Trump said Mexico would pay for it? Come on, they didn't. How much of that wall did he build? I think the last number I saw was about 2%. And then when it came time for him to do a photo op, you know where he did it? In the part of the wall that President Obama built.
But you're agreeing to a bill that would earmark $650 million to continue building that wall.
I pledge that I am going to bring forward that bipartisan bill to further strengthen and secure our border. Yes, I am. And I'm going to work across the aisle to pass a comprehensive bill that deals with a broken immigration system. I think Jackson's question, part of it was to acknowledge that America has always had migration, but there needs to be a legal process for it.
Oh, there's got to be a legal way to come here. Think about how backwards she's saying it. We brought in tens of millions of people and now we want to legalize them. That's not American. That's taking and rewarding people who broke the law. It's pretty obvious to those of us that have been paying attention to it. What's funny is like even Bill Clinton would not have agreed with her. They said, we've got to shut this thing down and let people come in the legal way, which, by the way, sounds an awful lot like Donald Trump with we're going to put a big wall up and have a big, beautiful door in it and bring the people through the beautiful door. This stuff is like, it's eminently obvious to sane and sober people. I'm not convinced she's any of those things. She said the same thing like multiple times. I've never once heard a concrete idea other than we know what can work. What is this crap? Seriously, who talks like that in conditionalities and hypotheticals? You're running for an office. When somebody asks you, hey, do you have any experience in software development? And you go, yes, I do. Can you tell me something about it? Well, I know what can be done in software, and I've seen it, and we've seen it as a country. And you're over here as an employer going like, what programs did you write, a-hole? Like, what teams have you been on and what products have been released to market? What stage of the development did you join in and what's successful and how long did it take for it to go? It's craziness to say we know what can work.
We should have a bipartisan approach to fixing this problem, which is a long-standing problem.
But what are those solutions?
The solution includes putting resources at the border to do what we can to process people effectively and putting in place laws that actually allow for a meaningful pathway to citizenship.
What? That includes putting like what do those plans include? Resources, a pathway to citizenship. What is a pathway to citizenship? We deport your ass and then you get to come back in legally? That's the right way to boot. We have a pathway to citizenship. There exists a pathway to citizenship, folks. We'll have Aaron Stevenson on at some point in the future and we'll talk about that again. I swear, it makes my head spin. I don't know how else to handle it. Let's talk about my buddies at Patriot Coolers for a second so I can take a breather. I'm using the 19-ounce coffee mug right now. I'm almost out of coffee, so you can tell that I'm fully revved up. PatriotCoolers.com. The promo code is KYLE. KYLE saves you 10%. PatriotCoolers.com. Or you can simply go into the link in our show description, and when you do, you'll see the Kyle Seraphin collection, which is in fact the Suspendables collection. And rather than decorate it with stickers the way that I have, although I do like these stickers, I know it's my mug and not my wife's, you can get it pre-engraved. It's already set up for you. You can either get the badge or the flag. They both look great. They look great in black. They look great in green. They look great in all the colors. White is a little weak on the engraving for whatever that's worth. Go ahead and get something like a sticker if you're going to do it in white, or have it blank. If you just want to be like one of those people that nobody knows, you're the gray man in the world, you can have a white coffee mug. PatriotCoolers.com, great company based out of Houston, Texas. They have fast shipping with an American warehouse. They will get you the product quickly, and you're not going to be disappointed. There's nobody that we've sent these to that have been like, hey, you screwed us over. If you're in the market, check them out. Think about them, especially as gift giving comes up. For people that are hard to give a gift, something like that is really easy. Okay, I think we're there. I think we're at the thing. There's one more question that came out of the town hall that I thought was worth covering, and it's the only question that Democrats should be asking if they don't want Joe Biden, which we found out they didn't want. This is the question: what would you do that is not like Joe? And there's never an answer. I'm going to play you the back-to-back version of what would you do differently, her answer here, her answer on The View, and Tim Wall's answer on The View. We'll do all three of these things and kind of give you a taste. Like I say, I like to make an argument, and then I like to bring you the evidence. This is the evidence of it. Here we go.
Considering you have been in the position of vice president for the past 4 years under the Biden administration, how can we expect you to deviate from the direction of that administration compared to your own? How can we differentiate your policy and your beliefs from that of Biden's?
That's a great question, and thank you. Well, first of all, my administration will not be a continuation of the Biden administration. I bring to this role my own ideas and my own experience. I represent a new generation of leadership on a number of issues and believe that we have to actually take new approaches. For example, what we talked about in terms of housing. My experience that leads to that priority includes what I did to take on the big banks around the foreclosure crisis when I brought billions of dollars to homeowners that were the subject of predatory lending. I know what home ownership means to the American people, not to mention what it meant to my mother, who worked very hard and saved up so that by the time I was a teenager she was able to buy our first home.
What the heck does that have to do with anything? What's going to be different? You brought different experience? You have as little or less experience? You've never had a private sector job? You've never worked anywhere outside of government? Your mom was a medical researcher with a PhD and your dad was a professor at Stanford? I don't know. I don't know what that means. I don't get it. How do you walk away from that and go like, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense? Honestly, like I don't know how they must be terrified of this person. And yet at the same time, we're all going to get screwed if she gets put in. And I still think she's going to get installed. There's no reason for me to think otherwise. She's going out and doing these absolutely disastrous town hall meetings. She's doing terrible, stupid interviews. She's being made fun of by SNL, and it doesn't seem to stop anything. Here she is on The View. What would she do differently? Nothing.
Well, if anything, would you have done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
There is not a thing that comes to mind in terms of, and I've been a part of most of the decisions that have had impact.
Oh, okay, fine. That sounds really good. I'm glad that that's the case. How about Tim? What does he say?
Can you point to a policy decision over the last 4 years that you and the vice president would have handled differently from President Biden?
Well, I think this expansion on Medicare is something that I wished would have been proposed sooner. But look, they're tackling the issues that they needed to. They came out of a pandemic that Donald Trump had left a mess for, an economy with supply chains that were broken.
That's the end of the clip. Nothing. No. We just want to go back to Donald Trump, who's a fascist. Did you hear her talk about predatory lending, by the way? You know the funny thing about predatory lending is what you do when you say that something is predatory and that there's no other way for you to find a home, which is absurd. What happened is the federal government got involved in the housing market, insisted that banks lend to some people who had no business. They were not creditworthy. So the banks turned around and said, okay, fine. If you want to make sure that it works for us, we'll make it work. We'll make a bunch of money off it. I have a cousin who's a millionaire because of that. Sure. Like predatory lending? You're taking the agency away from grown adults. Yet another reason why I don't think the franchise should be so big. If you're a fool and you know how to use no money, if you make terrible financial decisions, why should you be involved in making my country's financial decisions that affect me? Why should you be able to vote my money away? I'm really responsible with my money, it turns out. I learned that the hard way. I wasn't always responsible, and then I got responsible. My wife and I paid off our student loan debts. You don't have to buy my vote because I already paid it, like many of you. I went to work, I took my paycheck, and I threw it in a hole called debt so that I didn't have any debt anymore. And I've lived debt-free for a long time, including when I was a federal employee. It's one of the reasons why the FBI didn't have a salary over me that was going to make me bankrupt. It wasn't going to happen. I don't even think my net worth took that much of a hit. We were really lucky that we were able to turn an income starting in April of last year. But I went 14 months without a paycheck. How many of you people can do that? And if you can, it's because you're making good financial decisions. I trust you to vote. What I don't trust is people that have never had anything, that live paycheck to paycheck, that are quote unquote public service and devoted to it. It's so insane. So let's get into this. A little more town hall, but this is about the fascism part. Because this, I think, is where it gets really crazy. It really does. Fascism. Here we go. It got brought up over and over again. She did her first, we could call it a press conference, except it was 3 minutes of her talking about Donald Trump being a fascist. I'm going to show you a little piece of it, and I'm going to clip to the end where she literally just turns and walks away. It's like a Joe Biden style. What's going to be different about hers versus Joe Biden? Basically nothing. She actually acts like Joe Biden at the podium. It's pretty hilarious. Anderson Cooper trying to hold her feet to the fire.
For weeks, you have been calling Donald Trump unstable, unhinged. You've called him dangerous. You've quoted General Milley recently, who called him a fascist. Today, you quoted General Kelly, who said that Trump repeatedly praised Hitler. Yeah. But there are tens of millions of Americans right now who have heard all those things, and they don't buy it, or even if they do, they're still going to vote for Donald Trump. He's arguably more popular now than ever. You have 13 days to go. What do you say to those voters to convince them? Because some of them are in this room.
Sure, and I thank you all for taking the time to be here. And you could be doing a number of other things with your time. So this really is proof that we love our country. People are engaged, Anderson, and really want to talk about the issues. And so the issue that you raise, yes, I do believe that Donald Trump is unstable, increasingly unstable, and unfit to serve. And I don't necessarily think that everyone has heard what you and I have heard repeatedly, which is the people who know Donald Trump best, the people who worked with him in the White House, in the Situation Room, in the Oval Office, all Republicans, by the way.
Okay, this is the argument she continues to make. The people that know Donald Trump best think Donald Trump is dangerous. And yet, the people that listen to Donald Trump and hang on his every word, the people that support Donald Trump, and some of the smart people that I really enjoy being around, they all support him too. So what does that tell you? The milquetoast OG sort of like Republican swamp didn't like him. And the generals who wanted business as usual, they also didn't like him. He didn't start any new wars. That's bad for generals who like to go into the military-industrial complex. How interesting. So it's funny, the argument she's making, which Anderson Cooper says, a lot of people have already heard this stuff. Like, how are you going to change their minds? She basically says, thanks for being here. I want to just, deflect as long as possible. Let me just try to let me give myself a running start into nonsense. And then she says, the people who are going to vote for Donald Trump already think are scum, think that Donald Trump is scum. It's like, well, we don't continue. This is called an argument to authority. The argument to authority is, look at these people. They say this thing. That is why it's true. And we go, we don't accept your authority. Not at all. We've seen them. In fact, you're actually making a counter argument. You're saying people that we think are discredited, they're saying something, so we don't have any credit in what they've said. This is part 2 of that little question.
And then today we learned that John Kelly, a 4-star Marine general, who was his longest-serving chief of staff, gave an interview recently in the last 2 weeks of this election, talking about how dangerous Donald Trump is. And I think one has to think about, why would someone who served with him, who is not political, a 4-star Marine general, why is he telling the American people now? And frankly, I think of it as he's just putting out a 911 call to the American people. Understand what could happen if Donald Trump were back in the White House.
It sounds like he would get rid of people like that. Now, she makes the final argument, which I think is actually the best at the end. Yeah, John Kelly, he's not political. He was a political appointee. That makes him political. That's kind of how it works. Donald Trump was not a politician. He's a politician now. That's how it works. You don't get to just play the side and say this. Just because you were in the military, by the time you reach, let's say, full bird colonel, you are working in a political office. You have had to go and do your time in D.C. and get indoctrinated. Everybody knows you've seen an 05 become an 06, and the game changes. Because now they're all vying for that star. It's a political situation. That's how you get appointed up that high. Well, whatever. Let's just take her at her word. Here's the thing that makes it that the best point for me. She said that all of these people that were the guardrails on Trump 1.0 are gone. And then he's going to be completely unfettered. Do you know how many MAGA people are like cheering, have lost their minds about the excitement of that being the possibility? That's been the whole point of this. He's rooted out the people that are not going to let him do the thing. I hope he comes in and tears it up like a lion. I don't think he's going to get a chance. But man, I would love to see it. Nothing makes me happier than the thought of like a guy like Kash Patel telling me he's going to turn the Hoover Building into a deep state memorial or a museum. Amazing stuff. Do that. Here we go.
And this time, we must take very seriously those folks who knew him best and who were career people are not going to be there to hold him back. At least before, there were folks who we know what he would say, but they would restrain him. Imagine now Donald Trump in the Oval Office, in the Situation Room. He who has openly admired dictators, said he would be a dictator on day one. The former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff has said he is a fascist to the core.
You've quoted General Milley calling Donald Trump a fascist. You yourself have not used that word to describe him. Let me ask you tonight, do you think Donald Trump is a fascist?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. And I also believe that the people who know him best on this subject should be trusted.
Argument to authority. The people that know him best. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs. How many of you guys want to trust Mark Milley to do anything? The guy that was actively reaching out to China and doing something that is probably treasonous. And I don't use that word lightly. How about John Kelly? the former chief of staff, who's been going out and making stories up. Those people aren't going to be in there. So there you go. This is Godwin's law. We're essentially right there. She's right on the edge of it. Takeaways from Kamala Harris's, the first takeaway that CNN published was, yes, Harris thinks Trump is a fascist. And she went out and did an entire press conference on it. This is what desperation looks like, because they have to make this look close if they're going to try to steal it. And it's going to look stupider and stupider when they do. I'm not trying to blackpill you, folks. I'm really not. I'm just trying to set you up for the possibility that we're going to be dealing with this idiot. And she's terrible at it. We're going to get exactly what they said. The thing that she can't say is she's Biden one more time. She literally does a Biden press conference, which is 3 minutes at the podium. I'll skip around. I promise you. We're going to go towards the end of it. But let's get her. She walks out to a podium and says this.
Trump's former chief of staff, John Kelly, a retired 4-star general, confirmed that while Donald Trump was president, he said he wanted generals like Adolf Hitler, like judges, like journalists, like nonpartisan election officials. That Donald Trump is someone who, I quote, certainly falls into the general definition of fascist, who in fact vowed to be a dictator on day one and vowed to use the military as his personal militia to carry out his personal and political be there and no longer be there to rein him in. So the bottom line is this. We know what Donald Trump wants. He wants unchecked power. The question in 13 days will be, what do the American people want? Thank you.
No questions. I'm out. Joe Biden style. I've skipped around. That's like a 3-minute thing. She literally stepped out for 3 minutes and 5 seconds and spoke. And I can't see the podium, so I can't answer which podium she was using. Ain't that something? All this talk of fascism. It made me get ready to ask something about fascism. But before we do it, let me give you a little historical precedent, because this is not new. Do you know who likes to call people fascists when they're not fascists? Communists. Check this out, coming out of the archives. Kind of interesting. You'll even tell by the sound quality. This is an old technique. Black and white. Here we go.
In 1943, the following directive was issued from party headquarters to all communists in the United States. It read, "When certain obstructionists become too irritating, label them after suitable buildups as fascist or Nazi or anti-Semitic, and use the prestige of anti-fascist and tolerance organizations to discredit them. In the public mind, constantly associate those who oppose us with those names which already have a bad smell. The association will, after enough repetition, become fact in the public mind."
A little bit of Saul Alinsky style. 1943, the American Communist Party put out a directive to label those who were antithetical to their beliefs as fascists. This is not a new technique. It's not even clever. It's not particularly interesting. And it turns out they don't really care if it's accurate. Here's a piece from Khan Academy. I wanted you guys to understand this one. This is what is fascism. It's a 13.5-minute video. I'll post the entire thing over on the Locals channel. So go to kyleserafin.com if you guys want to find this, or you can Google it yourself, but I'll just put it in a place where you guys can find it. The most important thing is, let's just get a real definition of the actual word fascism. We've talked about it before. I don't have a PhD. I'm going to let somebody who does talk about a little piece of it. Enjoy.
We are going to talk about fascism. Fascism is a definable thing, and in some places, most notably Italy and Germany, it was a system of government. The word fascism comes from the Italian word fascio, which just means a bundle or sheaf. It had long been used as a political image in Europe. Then, in 1914, a copy editor and former socialist named Benito Mussolini, having turned his back on socialism, was looking for a name for his new political group. He chose Fascio Rivoluzionario d'Azione Interventista, Revolutionary League for Interventionist Action. Eventually, Mussolini founded the National Fascist Party, and this was its symbol. Fascist behavior aims to bring together different groups of angry, discontented extremists and to figure out how to get them to work with each other. Fascists have to form alliances with existing elite groups and individuals. Fascists believed in elevating a pure state above all else. Everything for the state, nothing outside the state, nothing against the state, Italian fascists like to say. In practice, fascism generally ended up benefiting capitalist owners and industries, while capitalist industries supported the state. As Paxton said, fascism worked in uneasy but effective collaboration with traditional elites. In the process, democracy was sacrificed to benefit those economic elites and the fascists themselves.
Let me just grab a little piece of that. It benefits traditional elites. It benefits the quote unquote capitalist people, so the folks that have the biggest businesses, which they always act like are the problem. It's the state requiring subservience. The only way those buildings or those businesses are going to benefit is if they get in line with the state. In other words, the state directs their activities, but they don't own them. They just tell them what to do. You know, kind of like big tech, kind of like big pharma, kind of like all of these elite organizations. They're going to sacrifice democracy, kind of like someone who is a primary candidate that doesn't have to run in the primary, that is a nominee that's never gotten a vote by the party, that was simply selected. That's kind of interesting stuff, isn't it? I find all of that to be perfect in a lot of ways. And of course, we listen to Saul Alinsky. We listen to some of these older rules for radicals. It's always accuse the other team of doing the thing that you're doing. We call it projection. It's a psychological problem. But as a tactic, you're simply just doing a counter accusation. And then I want to think, what are the results of the Biden administration's problems? They've created wars around the country. They've created unrest. And who historically were the Democrats, if not fascists, aka the Ku Klux Klan? Because that's where they came from. You know, people that were friends with Joe Biden. Interesting. Here's another little piece. These are snippets. Enjoy this one.
War made possible for us the solution of a whole series of problems that could never have been solved in normal times. One last thing that did not make it into Paxton's definition, but that is prevalent in all fascist movements, is the use of symbolic imagery, staged events, and propaganda. Fascist movements always use local symbols and myths in order to increase their appeal. The Ku Klux Klan, wrote Charles Edward Jefferson, a pro-Klan minister in 1920s New York, is the Mussolini of America. They were anti-Catholic, anti-Black, and anti-Semitic, believing that those groups were outside of the nation.
Anti-Catholic, anti-Black, and anti-Semitic. That actually describes the Democrat Party pretty well. They think very poorly of Black people. They don't think very well of Jews. And we've seen what they think about Catholics. And I would actually broaden it out to say Christians in general at this point. They also like to use propaganda. Where do we see that? No brainer. What about using symbols? Like putting somebody in front of the seal of the President of the United States, or a man standing with a red backlit in front of Independence Hall, trying to make themselves look like something that they're not. It looks exactly like what fascism is. It's fairly incredible to see this stuff. And again, when in doubt, call the other team a fascist. It's not working, folks. It actually isn't working. Here's the best part of it. This is a piece from Catholic Vote. I'm going to talk about that, and then I'll pitch them as well. But this is a piece coming out of today's Loop, written by Rachel Quackenbush. Young American men are the only demographic shifting more conservatively, the survey finds. That's all we need. If you're older, you're probably already relatively conservative if you're a man. That's just how it works. If you're not, you probably aren't married anymore. But young men between the ages of 18 and 34 are the only demographic in a study of 20 developed countries that have shifted more conservatively in recent years. I wonder why. We all know that as things get crappier, men must harden the heck up. A Harvard Youth poll released in late September showed Democratic Vice President Kamala Harris holding strong support among young women with a 47-point lead over Donald Trump on issues like climate change and abortion. Young men, however, her lead was much more modest at 17 points. I assure you that will continue to drop. The most interesting thing that I found here is that for many young men, economy and the inflation were top concerns. That's the way that you have a family. That's the way that the biological imperative works. A 2022 survey on the Center for American Life polled that 70% of men aged 18 to 29 were primarily focused on inflation and gas prices. Only 46 were focused on abortion laws, while 64% of young women cited abortion as a top concern. When men are less interested in abortion than women, it will drive women away from abortion. This is the way you lead. And it turns out that's really obvious to me, because if men are willing to take care of their children, then you don't have to worry about women thinking abortion is the right option. It will become less and less prevalent. This is how we stamp it out. Everybody thinks we're going about it like going after women. Nope, you go after men. And it turns out, yeah, men do follow where women are, except when women start making terrible decisions and start running for president like this lady. Then you got to have men step up and lead. If you guys are interested in traditional values, in things that just make sense to those of us who have been alive long enough to know that there was another way, and most of America used to agree on it, check out CatholicVote.org. My friends over there at CatholicVote.org, they are an advocacy group for Roman Catholics, but also basically for all Christian positions, which is, broadly speaking, pretty much a conservative position. You're not going to be left out there. They're not going to hammer you over the head over it. Faith, family, and freedom. Yes, they're out there. They're backing guys like Mark Houck. And let me just say this. I'll probably throw it up on social media later. But if you live in PA and Mark Houck is an option where you're at, I think he's running against Mike Rogers, write him in. He's actually doing a write-in candidate, same values, faith, family, freedom, a man who stood up against the DOJ, who understands what weaponized government's about. You guys can support him. He was Catholic Hero of the Year in 2022, and I got it in 2023, I guess, something like that. CatholicVote.org, CatholicVote.org. Check them out. Make sure you're following them. Make sure that you're supporting them if you are so inclined. They've been sending out the postcards and making it all work. I like it. Last little thing here, because they're not done with us. You want to talk about fascism? How about telling people what they need to do with their body and making all kinds of crazy ideas? That working with private industry thing, this just came out today. One of my buddies sent me a screenshot from whatever the heck local news channel it was. The CDC is now recommending a second dose of the 2024-2025 COVID-19 vaccine for people 65 years and older, and for anybody who's moderately or severely immune compromised. That is fresh up today. It just reminds me about all the tyranny that took place under this regime and how they tried to shove it down our throats to benefit their corporate benefactors like Big Pharma when none of us needed it. And you know how I know we didn't need it? Because I didn't get it, and I'm still sitting here alive, like so many other of you that said, no thanks on this garbage. We're not going to do emergency use products. I don't want to be part of your experiment. I would like to be part of the control group. And shockingly, there's so many of us that are doing just fine after all of that. That's what we got for today's program. I hope that was enough information for you guys to walk away with. Again, a little bit heavy on the fascist definitions. I will post those over at KyleSerafin.com. So if you guys want to go look for it over on the locals channel, we'll throw some up. You can peel it off and put it on social medias on other places if you like as well. You can send the links from our locals channel. You can actually share the links and it'll go and let them play because it's just a Rumble interface. You can play them over on True Social. You can play them on Twitter and so on. KyleSerafin.com for the local channel if you want to catch all these clips. And of course, I'll always put the articles now for subscribers so you guys can go and read the articles yourself if you are so inclined. How about a 5-star review coming in from a very recent episode talking about Daniel Penny? This is That New JSE. Says, thank you for always telling the truth. Uncomfortable truths are still truths indeed, Mr. Serafin. 5 stars every day. Pound it. I pound it back to you, my friend. Mr. JSE, thanks for leaving us a review. You can do that over on Spotify, where we've started doing video. If you are using the Spotify app, you should be able to get video for all the episodes after about 400 right now. So the last 2 weeks or so are going to be over there. I do have a palate cleanse for you. I'm not going to leave you hanging, folks. Let's figure out where I put it, though. I put the palate cleanse on video slot number 11. I don't know. This one has nothing to do with anything other than I've cleaned up my diet, so maybe you have too. I made fun of my buddy Joe Altman yesterday for eating junk food. Here's somebody that's asking, how do you keep such an awful physique? What do you got to do? Some British humor for you.
Hey man, sorry. I ask out of shape people how they got so out of shape.
Okay.
And I was just wondering if you could tell me a little bit more about how you cultivated this terrible physique.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say really focus on like the beige foods and just generally every day try and eat like you're some kind of mad medieval king.
And what do you usually have for like dinner?
Rotisserie chickens,
nice.
Any kind of large roasted meat. To be honest, the base food is kind of immaterial. Anything you can kind of melt a load of cheese on is always a bit of a winner in my
Nice, so awesome. Well, you're looking terrible today.
Thank you.
Gigantic.
Thank you.
How old are you? You 30?
I'm 31.
31. But obviously you look A lot
older. Yeah, and that's kind of the beauty of being really out of shape, is that it does age you massively.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Anything else you want to add?
I just say eat more, move less, and you'll get there.
Amazing. Here's this to say thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. You like that, don't you?
Eat more, move less. Yeah, that's the opposite of it. I guess that's why RFK has an appeal over on the Trump ticket, right? Make America healthy again. There's a lot of fatties out there that are not taking care of themselves. If you happen to be one of those people, do not despair. Start eating meat. Start moving your body around. We can do it. It's probably too late to be in war-fighting shape by November the 5th, but hopefully they'll give us a little bit of a reprieve before the crazy starts. Hang in there. God bless you. Go meet your neighbors. Let them know you're a human being too. They may be on the other team. You can all be on the same team in your community. I hope that was not a demotivator for you. And I'll see you guys again. Is it Thursday already? I'll see you tonight for the Locals Call-In Show. We're going to have my buddy Sean Witzman, a J6er, an author, a writer, a thinker, a weirdo. Super fun. We're going to be talking about some weird stuff that he's been digging into on January 6th. So we'll kick around that. If you got some conspiracies, bring it tonight. Sean Witzman. We're going to be doing that at 8 o'clock Eastern time. Yeah, this should be a lot of fun, actually. And then afterwards, we'll dump you guys in. If you guys want, you can join his program, which is called the American Council for Truth in Journalism, which is sort of a satirical thing they do where they bring a bunch of wild people in. And it's full weirdo fest, and it's a lot of fun, and I've been on there as well. So make sure you guys check that out. We'll see you tonight, or we'll see you tomorrow morning for Friendly Friday. God bless. See you then.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Seraphin.